everybody, thank you for joining us back at Old Mama Hubbard's house. We are having a great time today. I'm here with my crew. This is Julia here, and she has something important she wants to say.
I shout out to Ronda and Nattie.
She wants to give a shout out to Ronda Rousey and Nattie from the WWE. That is not my doing. That is her and her siblings and her dad all watching WWE. Here is the rest of my crew. We've got Isaiah and Hudson over here snuggling.
Yeah, you can't
There is Josephine. And Alexia is over here working on some homework and getting ready for, I don't know, she's doodling. Sorry. Moms mess stuff up sometimes. So today we are going to jump back into Charlotte's Web here in a minute. We are trying really, really hard to get that finished up before the end of the week. Before we jump back into that, though, I know I introduced in one previous video the next couple books that we are looking at for maybe reading after Charlotte's Web is over. On our very next video, the kids will be casting their votes as to which of these two books they would like to hear. So just in case any of our listeners out there want to have their say, I'm going to let you know which two books it is that we're considering again. And then if you have a preference, please leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you would like to hear, and that way your voice can be heard and you can be counted in the vote as well. So our two options are an old classic. This is Sounder by William H. Armstrong. And I'll just read you the little blurbs on the back of these two books, and we'll go from there. So it says, Sounder, the great coon dog, can howl louder than any dog in the whole countryside. He is faithful and strong. When his master is caught stealing a ham to feed his starving family and is taken away to jail, Sounder is shot at by the sheriff's men. Sounder crawls off into the night, perhaps to die. No one knows how long the father will be gone or where he will be sent. The boy who loves them both must learn to deal with their absence and patiently wait their return. No one comes back from this experience the same. And then the other book that we are looking at possibly reading is called Edward's Eyes. So Edward's Eyes is by Patricia McLaughlin, and this is what the little blurb on the back of it says. Jake is a part of a very special family. He has a life filled with art, music, and baseball. But nothing is more special to Jake than his younger brother, Edward. Edward can make anyone laugh, and he is the only kid in the whole town who can throw the perfect knuckleball. But eventually, Jake learns that the most amazing gift Edward can ever give anyone goes to a stranger who is in desperate need of a miracle. Are you kicking that table and shaking my phone? Okay, be careful. It kind of looked like it for a minute, okay? Okay, so those are our two options. Please let us know. Like I said, leave us a comment while you're there. Hit the like button, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. We would love to hear from you and keep you involved here. So just let us know what you think. And on our very next video, these kids will be voting, so they're going to think about what they'd like to hear too, right guys?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty.
I know I'm going to choose.
You do? We'll keep it a secret till it's time to vote, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're going to jump right back in here with Charlotte's Web. We are ready, I believe, for chapter 14, Dr. Dorian. Are you all ready to hear this?
Yes.
Are you excited, sis?
Definitely.
Yes.
All right, we left with Charlotte singing Wilbur a lullaby again. She is putting that pig to sleep all the time, isn't she? She's always helping him get to rest. Okay. The next day was Saturday. Fern stood at the kitchen sink drying the breakfast dishes as her mother washed them. Mrs. Arble worked silently. She hoped Fern would go out and play with other children instead of heading for the Zuckerman's barn to sit and watch animals. Charlotte is the best storyteller I ever heard, said Fern, poking her dish towel into a cereal bowl. Fern, her mother said sternly, you must not invent things. You know spiders don't tell stories. Spiders can't talk. Charlotte can, replied Fern. She doesn't talk very loud, but she talks. What kind of story did she tell? Asked Mrs. Arble. Well, began Fern, she told us about a cousin of hers who caught a fish in her web. Don't you think that's fascinating? Fern, dear, how would a fish get in a spider's web? Said Mrs. Arble. You know it couldn't happen. You're making this up. Oh, it happened all right, replied Fern. Charlotte never fibs. This cousin of hers built a web across a stream. One day she was hanging around on the web and a tiny fish leaped into the air and got tangled in the web. The fish was caught by one fin, Mother. Its tail was wildly thrashing in the shining sun. Can't you just see the web sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish? Charlotte's cousin kept slipping in, dodging out, and she was beaten mercilessly over the head by the wildly thrashing fish, dancing in, dancing out, throwing... Fern! Snapped her mother. Stop it. Stop inventing these wild tales. I'm not inventing, said Fern. I'm just telling you the facts. What finally happened? Asked her mother, whose curiosity began to get the better of her. Charlotte's cousin won. She wrapped the fish up, then she ate him when she got good and ready. Spiders have to eat, the same as the rest of us. Yes, I suppose they do, said Mrs. Arble vaguely. Charlotte has another cousin, who is a balloonist. She stands on her head, lets out a lot of line, and is carried aloft on the wind. Mother, wouldn't you simply love to do that? Yes, I would, come to think of it, replied Mrs. Arble. But, Fern, darling, I wish you would play outdoors today instead of going to Uncle Homer's barn. Find some of your playmates and do something nice outdoors. You're spending too much time in that barn. It isn't good for you to be alone so much. Alone? Said Fern. Alone? My best friends are in the barn cellar. It's a very sociable place, not at all lonely. Fern disappeared after a while, walking down the road toward Zuckerman's. Her mother dusted the sitting room. As she worked, she kept thinking about Fern. It didn't seem natural for a little girl to be so interested in animals. Finally, Mrs. Arble made up her mind she would pay a call to old Dr. Dorian and ask his advice. She got in the car and drove to his office in the village. Dr. Dorian had a thick beard. He was glad to see Mrs. Arble and gave her a comfortable chair. It's about Fern, she explained. Fern spends entirely too much time in the Zuckerman's barn. It doesn't seem normal. She sits on a milk stool in a corner of the barn cellar, near the pig pen, and watches animals hour after hour. She just sits and listens. Dr. Dorian leaned back and closed his eyes. How enchanting, he said. It must be real nice and quiet down there. Homer has some sheep, hasn't he? Yes, said Mrs. Arble, but it all started with that pig. We let Fern raise on a bottle. She calls him Wilbur. Homer bought the pig, and ever since it left our place, Fern has been going to her uncle's to be near it. I have been hearing things about that pig, said Dr. Dorian, opening his eyes. They say he's quite a pig. Here it has a picture to show us. Mrs. Arble talking to Dr. Dorian. Have you heard about the words that appeared in the spider's web? Asked Mrs. Arble nervously. Yes, replied the doctor. Well, do you understand it? Asked Mrs. Arble. Understand what? Do you understand how there could be any writing in a spider's web? Oh, no, said Dr. Dorian. I don't understand it. But for that matter, I don't understand how a spider learned to spin a web in the first place. When the words appeared, everyone said they were a miracle, but nobody pointed out that the web itself is a miracle. What's miraculous about a spider's web? said Mrs. Arble. "I don't see why you say a web is a miracle. It's just a web." "Ever try to spin one?" asked Dr. Dorian. Mrs. Arble shifted uneasily in her chair. "No," she replied, "but I can crochet a doily, and I can knit a sock." "Sure," said the doctor, "but somebody taught you, didn't they?" "My mother taught me." "Well, who taught a spider?" "A young spider knows how to spin a web without any instructions from anybody. Don't you regard that as a miracle?" "I suppose so," said Mrs. Arble. "I never looked at it that way before. Still, I don't understand how those words got into the web. I don't understand it, and I don't like what I can't understand." "None of us do," said Dr. Dorian, sighing. "I'm a doctor. Doctors are supposed to understand everything. But I don't understand everything, and I don't intend to let it worry me." Mrs. Arble fidgeted. "Fern says the animals talk to each other. Dr. Dorian, do you believe animals talk?" "I never heard one say anything," he replied. "But that proves nothing. It is quite possible that an animal has spoken civilly to me, and that I didn't catch the remark because I wasn't paying attention. Children pay better attention than grown-ups. If Fern says that the animals in Zuckerman's barn talk, I'm quite ready to believe her. Perhaps if people talked less, animals would talk more. People are incessant talkers. I can give you my word on that." "Well, I feel better about Fern," said Mrs. Arble. "You don't think I need to worry about her?" "Does she look well?" asked the doctor. "Oh, yes." "Appetite good?" "Oh, yes, she's always hungry." "Sleep well at night?" "Oh, yes." "Then don't worry," said the doctor. "Do you think she'll ever start thinking about something besides pigs and sheep and geese and spiders?" "How old is Fern?" "She's 8. "Well," said Dr. Dorian, "I think she will always love animals. But I doubt that she spends her entire life in Homer Zuckerman's barn cellar. How about boys? Does she know any boys?" "She knows Henry Fussy," said Mrs. Arble brightly. Dr. Dorian closed his eyes again and went into deep thought. "Henry Fussy," he mumbled. Remarkable. Well, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Let Fern associate with her friends in the barn if she wants to. I would say, offhand, that spiders and pigs were fully as interesting as Henry Fussy. Yet, I predict that the day will come when even Henry will drop some chance remark that catches Fern's attention. It's amazing how children change from year to year. "How's Avery?" he asked, opening his eyes wide. "Oh, Avery," chuckled Mrs. Arble. "Avery is always fine. Of course, he gets into poison ivy and gets stung by wasps and bees and brings frogs and snakes home and breaks everything he lays his hands on. He's fine." "Good," said the doctor. Mrs. Arble said goodbye and thanked Dr. Dorian very much for his advice. She felt greatly relieved. Chapter 15. The Crickets. The crickets sang in the grasses. They sang the song of summer's ending, a sad, monotonous song. "Summer is over and gone," they sang, "over and gone, over and gone. Summer is dying, dying." The crickets felt it was their duty to warn everybody that summertime cannot last forever, even on the most beautiful days in the whole year. The days when summer is changing into fall, the crickets spread the rumor of sadness and change. Everybody heard the song of the crickets. Avery and Fern Arble heard it as soon as they walked the dusty road. They knew that school would soon begin again. The young geese heard it and knew that they would never be little goslings again. Charlotte heard it and knew that she hadn't much time left. Mrs. Zuckerman, at work in the kitchen, heard the crickets, and a sadness came over her too. Another summer gone, she sighed. Lurvy, at work building a crate for Wilbur, heard the song and knew it was time to dig potatoes. Summer is over and gone, repeated the crickets. How many nights till frost, sang the crickets. Goodbye, summer, goodbye. The sheep heard the crickets, and they felt so uneasy they broke a hole in the pasture fence and wandered up into the field across the road. The gander discovered the hole and led his family through, and they walked to the orchard and ate the apples that were laying on the ground. A little maple tree in the swamp heard the cricket song and turned bright red with anxiety. Wilbur was now the center of attraction on the farm. Good food and regular hours were showing results. Wilbur was a pig any man would be proud of. One day, more than 100 people came to stand at his yard and admire him. Charlotte had written the word radiant, and Wilbur really looked radiant as he stood in the golden sunlight. Ever since the spider had befriended him, he had done his best to live up to his reputation. Don't kick the table, sissy. When Charlotte's Web said,
the door.
"You're moving the table with your feet. I can feel it and see it moving. Don't move it, because it'll make the video all shaky, okay?" Apologize about that, guys. Charlotte had written the word radiant, and Wilbur really looked radiant as he stood in the sunlight. Ever since the spider had befriended him, he had done his best to live up to his reputation. When Charlotte's Web said, "some pig," Wilbur had tried hard to look like some pig. When Charlotte's Web said, "terrific," Wilbur had tried to look terrific. And now that the web said, "radiant," he did everything possible to make himself glow. It is not easy to look radiant, but Wilbur threw himself into it with a will. He would turn his head slightly and blink his long eyelashes. Then he would breathe deeply, and when his audience grew bored, he would spring into the air and do a backflip with half a twist. At this, the crowd would yell and cheer. "How's that for a pig?" Mr. Zuckerman would ask, well pleased with himself. "That pig is radiant." Some of Wilbur's friends in the barn worried for fear all this attention would go to his head and make him stuck up. But it never did. Wilbur was modest. Fame did not spoil him. He still worried about the future, as he could hardly believe that a mere spider would be able to save his life. Sometimes at night he would have a bad dream. He would dream that men were coming to get him with knives and guns, but that was only a dream. In the daytime, Wilbur usually felt happy and confident. No pig ever had truer friends, and he realized that friendship is one of the most satisfying things in the world. Even the song of the crickets did not make Wilbur too sad. He knew it was almost time for the county fair, and he was looking forward to the trip. If he could distinguish himself at the fair, and maybe win some prize money, he was sure Zuckerman would let him live. Charlotte had worries of her own, but she kept quiet about them. One morning, Wilbur asked her about the fair. "You're going with me, aren't you, Charlotte?" he said. "Well, I don't know," replied Charlotte. "The fair comes at a bad time for me. I shall find it inconvenient to leave home even for a few days." "Why?" asked Wilbur. "Oh, I just don't feel like leaving my web. Too much going on around here." "Please come with me," begged Wilbur. "I need you, Charlotte. I can't stand going to the fair without you. You've just got to come." "No," said Charlotte. "I believe I'd better stay home and see if I can't get some work done." "What kind of work?" asked Wilbur. "Egg laying. It's time I made an egg sack and filled it with eggs." "I didn't know you could lay eggs," said Wilbur in amazement. "Oh, sure," said the spider. "I'm versatile." "What does versatile mean? Full of eggs? asked Wilbur. "Certainly not," said Charlotte. "Versatile means I can turn with ease from one thing to another. It means I don't have to limit my activities to spinning and trappings and stunts like that." "Why don't you come with me to the fairgrounds and lay your eggs there?" pleaded Wilbur. "It would be wonderful fun." Charlotte gave her web a twitch and moodily watched it sway. "I'm afraid not," she said. "You don't know the first thing about egg laying, Wilbur. I can't arrange my family duties to suit the management of the county fair. When I get ready to lay eggs, I have to lay eggs, fair or no fair. However, I don't want you to worry about it. You might lose weight. We'll leave it this way. I'll come to the fair if I possibly can." "Oh, good," said Wilbur. "I knew you wouldn't forsake me just when I need you most." All that day Wilbur stayed inside, taking life easy in the straw. Charlotte rested and ate a grasshopper. She knew that she couldn't help Wilbur much longer. In a few days she would have to drop everything and build the beautiful little sack that would hold her eggs. Let me look at the next chapter. Oh, I think we can squeeze one more in. So chapter 16 is called Off to the Fair. The night before the county fair, everybody went to bed early. Fern and Avery were in bed by 8. Avery lay dreaming that the Ferris wheel had stopped and that he was in the top car. Fern lay dreaming that she was getting sick in the swings. Lurvy was in bed by 8:30. He lay dreaming that he was throwing baseballs at a cloth cat and winning a genuine Navajo blanket. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were in bed by 9. Mrs. Zuckerman lay dreaming about a deep freeze unit. Mr. Zuckerman lay dreaming about Wilbur. He dreamt that Wilbur had grown until he was 116 feet long and 92 feet high, and that he had won all the prizes at the fair and was covered with blue ribbons, and even had a blue ribbon tied to the end of his tail. See that picture, Sissy?
Yeah, so he looks so big.
He's so big. They show us a picture of what Mr. Arbo was dreaming about.
He'd be bigger
Can
than
you imagine a pig that size?
Mom, he'd
No.
probably be bigger than the fair.
He might be bigger than the whole fair. Down in the barn cellar, the animals too went to sleep early, all except Charlotte. Tomorrow would be fair day. Every creature planned to get up early to see Wilbur off on his great adventure. When morning came, everybody got up at daylight. The day was hot. Up the road at the Arbel's house, Fern lugged a pail of hot water to her room and took a sponge bath. Then she put on her prettiest dress because she knew she would see boys at the fair. Mrs. Arbel scrubbed the back of Avery's neck and wet his hair and parted it and brushed it down hard till it stuck to the top of his head, all but about 6 hairs that stood straight up. Avery put on clean underwear, clean blue jeans, and a clean shirt. Mr. Arbel dressed, ate breakfast, and then went out and polished his truck. He had offered to drive everybody to the fair, including Wilbur. Bright and early, Lurvy put clean straw in Wilbur's crate and lifted it into the pig pen. The crate was green. In gold letters it said, "Zuckerman's Famous Pig." Charlotte had her web looking fine for the occasion. Wilbur ate his breakfast slowly. He tried to look radiant without getting food in his ears. In the kitchen, Mrs. Zuckerman suddenly made an announcement. "Homer," she said to her husband, "I'm going to give that pig a buttermilk bath." "A what?" said Mr. Zuckerman. "A buttermilk bath. My grandmother used to bathe her pig with buttermilk when it got dirty. I just remembered." "Wilbur's not dirty," said Mr. Zuckerman proudly. "He's filthy behind the ears," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Every time Lurvy slops him, the food runs down around the ears. Then it dries and forms a crust. He also has a smudge on one side where he lays in the manure." "He lays in clean straw," corrected Mr. Zuckerman. Mr. Zuckerman sat down weakly and ate a donut. His wife went to the woodshed. When she returned, she wore rubber boots and an old raincoat, and she carried a bucket of buttermilk and a small wooden paddle. "Edith, you're crazy," mumbled Zuckerman, but she paid no attention to him. Together they walked to the pig pen. Mrs. Zuckerman wasted no time. She climbed in with Wilbur and went to work. Dipping her paddle in the buttermilk, she rubbed him all over. The geese gathered around to see the fun, and so did the sheep and the lambs. Even Templeton poked his head out curiously to watch Wilbur get a buttermilk bath. Charlotte got so interested, she lowered herself on a dragline so she could see better. Wilbur stood still and closed his eyes. She could feel the buttermilk trickling down his sides. Or he could feel the buttermilk trickling down his sides, sorry. He opened his mouth and some buttermilk ran in. It was delicious. He felt radiant and happy. When Mrs. Zuckerman got through and rubbed him dry, he was the cleanest, prettiest pig you ever saw. So there's the picture. Everybody sees
Yes.
Wilbur getting his buttermilk bath.
Yes.
He was pure white, pink around the ears and snout, and smooth as silk. The Zuckermans went up to change into their best clothes. Lurvy went to shave and put on his plaid shirt and his purple necktie. The animals were left to themselves in the barn. The 7 goslings paraded around and round their mother. Please, please, please take us to the fair, begged a gosling. Then all 7 goslings began Then all 7 began teasing to go. Please, 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 please. They made quite a racket. Children, snapped the goose, we're staying quietly at home. Only Wilbur Ober is going to the fair. Just then Charlotte interrupted. I shall go too, she said softly. I have decided to go with Wilbur. He may need me. We can't tell what may happen at the fairgrounds. Somebody's got to go along who knows how to write. And I think Templeton better come too. I might need somebody to run errands and do general work. I'm staying right here, grumbled the rat. I haven't the slightest interest in fairs. That's because you've never been to one, remarked the old sheep. A fair is a rat's paradise. Everybody spills food at the fair. A rat can creep out late at night and have a feast. In the horse barn you will find oats that the trotters and pacers have spilled. In the trampled grass of the infield you will find old discarded lunch boxes containing the foul remains of peanut butter sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, cracker crumbs, bits of doughnuts, and particles of cheese. In the hard-packed dirt of the midway, after the glaring lights are out and the people have gone home to bed, you will find a veritable treasure of popcorn fragments, frozen custard drippings, candied apples, abandoned by tired children, sugar fluff crystals, salted almonds, popsicles, partially gnawed ice cream cones, and the wooden sticks of lollipops. Everywhere is loot for a rat, in tents, in booths, in haylofts. Why, a fair has enough disgusting leftover food to satisfy a whole army of rats. Templeton's eyes were blazing. Is this true? He asked. Is this appetizing yarn of yours true? I like high living, and what you say tempts me. It is true, said the old chief. Go to the fair, Templeton. You will find that the conditions at a fair will surpass your wildest dreams. Buckets with sour mash sticking to them, tin cans containing particles of tuna fish, greasy paper bags stuffed with rotten. That's enough, cried Templeton. Don't tell me any more. I'm going. Good, said Charlotte, winking at the old sheep. Now then, there is no time to be lost. Wilbur will soon be put into the crate. Templeton and I must get in the crate right now and hide ourselves. The rat didn't waste a minute. He scampered over to the crate, crawled between the slats, and pulled straw up over him so that he was hidden from sight. All right, said Charlotte. I'm next. She sailed into the air, let out a dragline, and dropped gently to the ground. Then she climbed to the side of the crate and hid herself inside a knothole in the top board. The old sheep nodded. What a cargo, he said. That sign ought to say, Zuckerman's famous pig and 2 stowaways. Look out! The people are coming, umming, shouted the gounder. Cheese it, cheese it, cheese it! The big truck with Mr. Arble at the wheel backed slowly down toward the barnyard. Lurvy and Mr. Zuckerman walked alongside. Fern and Avery were standing in the body of the truck, hanging onto the sideboards. "Shh, listen to me," whispered the old sheep to Wilbur. "Guys, we're almost done. Be patient, okay?" "Listen to me," whispered the old sheep to Wilbur. "When they open the crate and try to put you in, struggle. Don't go without a tussle. Pigs always resist when they are being loaded." "If I struggle, I'll get dirty," said Wilbur. "Never mind that. Do as I say. Struggle. If you were to walk into the crate without resisting, Zuckerman may think that you were bewitched. He'll be scared to go to the fair." Templeton poked his head up through the straw. "Struggle if you must," said he, "but kindly remember that I am hiding down here in this crate, and I don't want to be stepped on, or kicked in the face, or pummeled, or crushed in any way, or squashed, or buffeted about, or bruised, or lacerated, or scarred, or biffed. Just watch what you're doing, Mr. Radiant, when they get shoving you in." "Be quiet, Templeton," said the sheep. "Pull in your head. They're coming. Look radiant, Wilbur. Lay low, Charlotte. Talk it up, geese." The truck backed slowly to the pig pen and stopped. Mr. Arble cut the motor, got out, walked around to the rear, and lowered the tailgate. The geese cheered. Mrs. Arble got out of the truck. Fern and Avery jumped to the ground. Mrs. Zuckerman came walking down from the house. Everybody lined up at the fence and stood for a moment admiring Wilbur and the beautiful green crate. Nobody realized that the crate already contained a rat and a spider. "That's some pig," said Mrs. Arble. "He's terrific," said Lurvy. "He's very radiant," said Fern, remembering the day he was born. "Well," said Mrs. Zuckerman, "he's clean anyway. The buttermilk certainly helped." Mrs. Arble studied Wilbur carefully. "Yes, he's a wonderful pig," he said. "It's hard to believe that he was the runt of the litter. You'll get some extra good ham and bacon, Homer, when it comes time to kill that pig." Wilbur heard these words and his heart almost stopped. "I think I'm going to faint," he whispered to the old sheep who was watching. "Kneel down," whispered the old sheep. "Let the blood rush to your head." Wilbur sank to his knees, all radiance gone. His eyes closed. "Look!" screamed Fern. "He's fading away." "Hey, watch me!" yelled Avery, crawling on all fours into the crate. "I'm a pig! I'm a pig!" "What a mess!" thought the rat. "What fantastic creatures boys are! Why did I let myself in for this?" The geese saw Avery in the crate and cheered. "Avery, you get out of that crate this instant," commanded his mother. "What do you think you are?" "I'm a pig!" cried Avery, tossing handfuls of straw into the air. "Oink, oink, oink!" "The truck is rolling away, Papa," said Fern. The truck, with no one at the wheel, had started to roll downhill. Mr. Arble dashed to the driver's seat and pulled on the emergency brake. The truck stopped. The geese cheered. Charlotte crouched and made herself as small as possible in the knothole so Avery wouldn't see her. "Come out at once," cried Mrs. Arble. Avery crawled out of the crate on hands and knees, making faces at Wilbur. Wilbur fainted away. "The pig has passed out," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Throw water on him." "Throw buttermilk," suggested Avery. The geese cheered. Lurvy ran for a pail of water. Fern climbed into the pen and knelt by Wilbur's side. "It's sunstroke," said Zuckerman. "The heat is too much for him." "Maybe he's dead," said Avery. "Come out of that pig pen immediately," cried Mrs. Arble. Avery obeyed his mother and climbed into the back of the truck so he could see better. Lurvy returned with cold water and dashed it on Wilbur. "Throw some on me," cried Avery. "I'm hot too." "Oh, keep quiet," hollered Fern. "Keep quiet." Her eyes were brimming with tears. Yeah, this is the last chapter. Fern feels like she's going to cry. It says her eyes were brimming with tears. Do you know why? She's worried for Wilbur, isn't she? Wilbur, feeling the cold water, came too. He rose slowly to his feet while the geese cheered. Oh, here's a picture. Where they threw the water on Wilbur to wake him up. He's up, said Mr. Arble. I guess there's nothing wrong with him. I'm hungry, said Avery. I want a candied apple. Wilbur's all right now, said Fern. We can start. I want to take a ride in the Ferris wheel. Mr. Zuckerman and Mr. Arble and Lurvy grabbed the pig and pushed him headfirst toward the crate. Wilbur began to struggle. The harder the men pushed, the harder he held back. Avery jumped down and joined the men. Wilbur kicked and thrashed and grunted. Nothing wrong with this pig, said Mr. Zuckerman cheerfully, pressing his knee against Wilbur's behind. All together now, boys. Shove. With a final heave, they jammed him into the crate. The geese cheered. Lurvy nailed some boards across the end so Wilbur couldn't back out. Then, using all their strength, the men picked up the crate and heaved it aboard the truck. They did not know that under the straw was a rat, and inside the knothole was a big gray spider. They only saw a pig. Everybody in, called Mr. Arble. He started the motor. The ladies climbed in beside him. Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy and Fern rode in the back, hanging onto the sideboards. The truck began to move ahead. The geese cheered. The children answered their cheer, and away everybody went to the fair. That is the end of that chapter, so we're going to stop there for today. Hopefully in our next video, or maybe two. We'll see kind of how it goes, how long it takes us to read the next little bit. But we only have 1 or 2 videos left with Charlotte's Web. Again, do not forget to vote in the comments. Let us know what you'd like to hear next. We have Sounder or Edward's Eyes. As you can see here, like I've said before, this is just, we're letting you in on our everyday little bit. You know, I love to read aloud to my kids. I know not everybody does. So this is an opportunity for those who like to listen to stories. Sometimes, you know, I'm too exhausted to read and I just want to listen to someone else read. So this is just a place where, hey, we're doing this anyway. You can join us if your kids need something to listen to. You need something to listen to, just to unwind and listen to a story. That's what we're here for. We are going to... Welcome to our life, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Vote below. Edward's Eyes. Sounder. I hope you're enjoying this. Life is crazy. I know we're not alone. Bye.